Welcome to Chaps Many Cultures. Flash, flash, flash. We're here. We all love a prize. We all love to win. We all love to be recognized as the best. But the context under which those awards are given out is very important. We're going to talk about that, how important that is, maybe for particular cultures, maybe in the culture of the companies. Stand by. Boom.
Boom! Welcome, everybody. Episode 92 to Chaps Many Cultures, and Brett is joining us from the lowest floor of the basement.
It is a dark and stormy night, as I think one poet once aptly described it. A dark and stormy night. With a lack of power, but that's fine. We're here. We have kept our promises. We always do. I think I deserve a prize.
I think you do deserve a prize. I think you should be the employee of the day, week, maybe employee of the week. Not sure if you deserve your own parking spot though, but it's all right.
Oh, well, okay. Well, I wouldn't want the parking spot right now anyway. That's fine. No problem. Yes, well, today we're talking about, and I know it's a little bit of a funny question. Should we ditch the employee of the month? Which is, we see these in kind of, I don't know, like fast food restaurants, when we're going to fast food restaurants, of course. The team member that gets recognized as the head person who is, I don't know what the criteria is, and this is what we wanted to talk about. You know, what is the criteria for the prizes we give to employees? So, yeah.
Well, I would argue that in those corporate cultures or whatever culture where an individual performance is praised or publicly recognized, that it's some level of performance metrics, some KPI, some level of, hey, this was the goal, you achieved it, or you were the fastest to achieve it, or you produced higher levels than the rest of the team. So it is singling out typically individual performance. And the question is this helpful? What purpose does this serve? In some cultures, it means creating this shiny star, this hero, this leader of the pack that can be demonstrated to the rest of the team, saying, hey, be more like employee of the month, or let's call, just for the sake of the argument, let's call that person Brett. Be more like Brett. Right, so that is supposed to serve the purpose of lighting fire under the butts of those who are not Brett or aren't performing like Brett yet. So in some cultures, this has a very inspiring, motivating effect. Can you think of a situation, Brett, where this may actually have the opposite effect?
Well, I want to take a step back. I think that when I mention fast food restaurants, many of the fast food restaurants, I guess, that display these type or give out these type of awards are franchises. You know, so I've had a part of my business life in a franchise. I was franchisee of the year once in a particular year. So. You know, and so what I found is when I came to a franchise, there was a system, which I thought was great. You know, as a person who was learning his chops in the business world, the core framework of the matrices of what made a successful business were important to me. Okay, so these are repeatable, transferable skills and frameworks that we put into a business that it worked before, it worked now, it works now. Perhaps it'll work in the future. Now, that is one thing where I thought that perhaps I was a little bit. I was very intrigued by that, and I learned a lot from it. And can you give me a second, mate? Sorry, just carry on. Sorry.
I'll carry on. No worries. This is what happens if the storm hits and you have to leave the studio. We rarely allow this to happen because we make sure that we are prepared for every eventuality. But today, it's dark as night in Chicago at this hour. So the predictability of franchise business models also has the benefit of not only having predictable processes to follow, there's also a level of perhaps predictability in the outcome. Like if you're selling burgers and fries to the masses, quite helpful to have a operating procedure, a template to work by. Or maybe your franchise is in real estate. How many of the big real estate companies in North America are franchise models, right? So you have the top performers, you have the top producers that are highlighted, not only in the hallways of their office, but also in public. They place ads in the newspaper. Hey, top producing real estate agent with, I don't know, Century 21, Keller Williams, and all the others that I didn't mention here.
Absolutely.
So that the predictability allows that, or the system of the business model probably makes it more likely for this type of recognition to serve the purpose or to yield the results that we want with that type of reward system. Right, Brett?
Yeah, so that's what I was trying to get at, is that I found the system was great, and it worked. It certainly was successful. I saw that those who replicated it and put those into practice were definitely successful in the business. What I wanted to do, however, back in Australia, and to your original question about where would that not work, in the Australian culture, putting someone on a pedestal like that was often not the most comfortable thing to do. And especially when you kind of pinned it around like sales performance and things like that. And many times it was much more about the group and the contribution of that person to a group, where we didn't really have employee of the month or employee of the week or anything like that. We basically just celebrated as a team and an intermediate, in different parts of the year, where we kind of came together and we celebrated that. But, of course, we're in the US now, and when I bought the business here, I found that it was fundamentally a different way to motivate employees, was to actually put somebody on a pedestal, which is a leader, which was hard for me to do. So I would say that in the franchise model, many a franchisee and many a franchise network has failed because they've tried to reinvent what the franchise system was trying to do, which I think is obviously that the failure is because the business failure is because they haven't followed that. But I think there's also room for innovation over the top of that, to add on to, not to change, but to add on to the system that's in place. And maybe, put some extra things in it, innovative ways to do it. That's what I always encourage people to do. So, yes, it's great to have an employee of the month. It's great to recognize individual achievement. But as long as that achievement is the culture of your business at its very core, I think, is clear to what's being celebrated. Because, matrices like sales, they're tangible things. But there are a lot of times, the best people that worked for me in my franchise system was the busybody that got on the store and cleaned that floor every day and made sure everything was merchandised properly, but not necessarily was interacting with the client, with the customers all the time. So to me, I celebrated that just as much as I celebrated the top salesperson, because the top salesperson probably wouldn't have been successful without the clean shelves and the proper things in place.
I think this is a critical distinction you make here, because it's easy. Let's say in cultures where individual performance is rewarded, or where rewarding individual performance is accepted and a behavior that has been modeled for generations, it's easy to fall into the trap only to reward the individual who's doing the bottom line relevant performance, who's closing the most deals, or who's being the best customer service agent, or whatever metrics you have in your organization. But sometimes rewarding the individual who does the behind the scenes work, whose work, or without whose work, is that correct English? Without the work of that person, the others couldn't perform at the level that they are performing at. So, as you said, the specificity of the praise is relevant, and it's I think in a global, in a cross-cultural context, it's very important. I would say it's mission critical to keep in mind and to consider whether individual performance is rewardable, if that makes sense in that culture. A well-known colleague of us, Andy Molinsky, who wrote the book Global Dexterity. I think I got it right here. Man, here, this guy who wrote that book. He invited me to co-author a blog post for the Harvard Business Review several years ago. That's what I posted in the comments, where we exactly talk about, is praise the same across cultures? Is praising one way going to work everywhere? And our answer is no, it is not. As Brett said, in Australia, the tall puppy syndrome will prevent you from being an American praiser. And you can take this much further. You look at certain Asian cultures where group performance is what wants to be, or what needs to be rewarded. By pointing out an individual, you will actually hurt that individual, because you will alienate that individual to the rest of the team who feels left out. And then there are cultures where praise in and by itself is a concept that is reserved for only very outstanding performances that go above and beyond what was expected. So the American form of praise, which can, for some cultures, is used in an almost inflationary way that is just, it becomes worthless to other cultures, right? So the amount of praise, the task which is being praised, and the individual or the team or the individuals, plural, performing that task, all of this needs to be taken into account. How many awards we're giving, and what they're for, and how that affects the rest of the group.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we're not advocating for the ditching of the employee, or celebrating, good work from people, but it certainly is always important to take a step back in the culture you're in and see, what does that mean? What will it project? What culture will it actually communicate to the people around you? And even in the same company, you may find that culture is different in another country, even if it's the same culture. It makes it very hard to export, like most companies have found it hard, to export a company culture to another country when it's included things like this. So it's always good to keep in mind. And there's plenty of tools out there that will tell you the particular cultures that do celebrate individual achievement in such a way, and others that don't. And this is all part of cultural competency as we make our way in the world, in the global world.
And there are so many other ways to recognize performance, to recognize achievement. There are some more covert ways to show this. You can bring donuts to the office if that's what you want to do, and then allow everybody to participate in that. I'm not endorsing that, because donuts, 5 minutes in your mouth, 5 years on your hips. However, your hip will look like a donut, like a big one that's wrapped around your hip. But there are other ways you can reward individual performance. You could take somebody out for lunch and have a conversation around what is important for them in the next 6 months in the company, what their goals are, maybe how goals need to be adjusted, and become a mentor to that person who is outperforming the others, without letting the others know, without putting that person on a pedestal, without making that person a tall poppy, and making that person subject to the criticism or the envy of the rest of the group. So there are so many ways to structure the praise in a culturally appropriate way. And sometimes you will find yourself leading a team that is multicultural, where you will have to balance how much you recognize an individual performance or how much you recognize a group performance. So it may not be a one-size-fits-all answer here.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. And this is part of the great things that you can bring into a multicultural team like that, even a global team. When you share with them some of the tools we use, and you get them to do a little bit of self-discovery, because even self-discovery about what motivates a person will give them some insights on how they can communicate to the person they report to. There are people that report to them, so on and so forth. Is that if you have these open communications to say, well, it's not important to me that I be called out individually. It's more important that that any good work that I do is shared as part of the team, and this just makes for some great open conversations. I find when when we've trained groups, I've teased this out of people, right? And I think both sides see the value then of either and or. And so you might find that somebody who's not comfortable in being called out then sees the value of it in the context of the culture that they're in, and then they might make them feel pretty special, and whereas in their past experience they have not been able to kind of display that specialness as right. well, and vice versa. So these are just great open discussions, ways of starting discussions with people that work for you or with people you work with, and so that we can go forward and make just a harmonious team, and one that works together with some understanding.
I've had this experience this year that I've shared this on one of the previous episodes here. I've made this experience with a client that we're serving this year, that is reconciling different behavioral preferences, European, North American, Indian, and especially when it comes to the reward system, when it comes to recognizing performance, these poles within the organization have caused some friction. And what we've been doing is we've allowed every team member with everybody has an equal voice. So every single team member has cast a legal ballot, to use a current phrase in the American public discourse. Every single individual in the company had a voice, and they're creating their code of excellence, and that also includes the part of recognition. How do we recognize each other's performance, or how do we hold each other accountable if the performance is not up to our expectations? Will we single out the individual who is not performing up to par, or are we dissipating it across the team? All of this is now becoming part of their intentionally created behavioral code of conduct, their group culture. However, it takes intention to create that, because before that, every side, every cultural subgroup in that organization had expectation of each other, and very often those expectations were not met. And you know what they say about expectations, they are premeditated resentments, and this is what was starting to boil there. And we were brought in to lower that temperature and help them figure out what is it, or how is it they want to be with each other. A very rewarding process, I have to say.
Absolutely. Patricia says, in multicultural settings with global teams, I've experienced a corporate policy of rewards and gifts are tricky. Of course, we come across these in, what is actually stipulated in a company as a reward. Can you give certain rewards in certain companies, even between colleagues? And yet in some cultures, these are great ways to give face, great way to give honor to a colleague you're working with. So yeah, so these are great points. So think about this, how you like to be rewarded, how you possibly might make you uncomfortable. You actually used a great term there. You said take the heat out of the room. This is one way Aussies will take the heat out of the room, because when somebody gets celebrated, and you turn up at the pub after work like that, that's the person that's going to get teased as the person that got recognized. Like, oh, who's the who brought the teacher an apple today, right? Like that kind of thing.
Mm.
So these are kind of things that from an Aussie point of view that would make us uncomfortable because we know we're going to get, ribbed in the guts later on. But it's all good. It's all good
I think
fun.
it would be great for those of you who are watching it now or the replay, post it in the comments, please. Let us know which reward systems have worked best for you, or how have you ever been in a situation of praise that made you uncomfortable, where you thought you were not, your performance wasn't recognized properly, or by pointing out one person's performance it may have hurt somebody else's. Whatever scenarios you can remember, we'd love to hear it. Put it in the comment box, whether you're on YouTube, on Facebook, or on LinkedIn. We'd love to hear it.
There's one example, right? This might not come naturally to somebody, but to actually get more work is sometimes a reward. Whereas sometimes, why don't we give people breaks as rewards? Vacations and holidays, like take some time off. And in this case, as Patricia says, some people really love some extra responsibility. The reward of great work is extra responsibility, and that can be just as impactful as anything. So, if you put somebody on the side and say, take the weekend off, or take tomorrow off as a reward, they may sit at home and go, oh, what's that all about? This is very unusual,
right?
If they're not used to it. So
I did such great work, and now you're putting me on the bench.
Now you don't want me.
I want to play.
You want me? What's up with that? No, that's a good point, Patricia. Thank you very much. That's great. Okay, so that's it. Another episode in the can. Tuesday, a dark and stormy night up here in the upper Midwest. But we're all good. There's tornado sirens going off, but we're still here.
I'm sending power your way. You've got the power.
I'm not worried about the power. I'm worried about getting blown away at the moment. There's sirens going off, so we might just leave it at that, and that's fine.
Well, you'll be safe, all right?
I am. I'm under I should be under a door hinge or something. Episode number 92. Two chaps, many cultures. Thank you very much, everybody, and we will see you mañana.
See you tomorrow.
Bye.